to the Three Amigos webinar series with Mark Sheffield, with Brian Lucas, me, and with Brian Tierney. He's out today, I think hopefully having some vacation time, but we'll get started here in just a second, give everybody a minute or two to be able to load in. Today we're going to be talking about Lightspeed accounting. What does accounting integration actually mean? And when does accounting actually happen in the system? What things are automated? What stuff doesn't actually happen? So excited to dive into that topic. Naturally, that's kind of essentially what I do all day long. And so what we typically see is, different dealers get brought in into the system and don't know how to customize it or move it into really make it work for them. So that should be stuff we're looking at today. But Mark, how's everything going on your end?
Good. I'm just going to be here for a pretty face for this one because you could run laps around me when it comes to accounting in Lightspeed. So I'll probably, as Q&A comes in, I'll probably just organize things and try to slip them in the gaps in your conversation. But things are going good. I've been talking to a lot of dealers across the country in the last week. I would say that July has been hit or miss. Talked to a few dealers that have had a pretty strong July, but talked to quite a few dealers that things have softened up just a little bit. And, it's going to be interesting to see what happens with the 27 model rollout. We came into 26. It was only a couple of months after 26's release that we started seeing rebates of programs. And so, I think 27 is going to be interesting because the manufacturers are going to have to figure out, do they want to back off on rebates on 27 models, or do they want to try to keep the momentum going? And then we've kind of got this big overarching FTC issue that is going on at this point in time, but hoping to have a big announcement on that problem in the next couple of weeks. Hopefully we'll have our first major OE who's going to come to market with unified pricing. And so and excited about that. It's been an incredible amount of work to get to that point. We're kind of hoping once we get one OE over the curb, that all the others will follow suit.
Yeah, no, that would be huge. I was actually just talking with a dealer the other day. Most of the dealers I've talked to, 2026 has felt up in comparison to 2025, that they're doing a little bit better. And I was hoping to see that, throughout busy season as well, right, during the crunch time. And they brought up the point, the FTC requirements has really impacted that. And there's a lot of, administrative tasks and a lot of things happening in order to get everything in line. And so he's not quite sure, what will busy season look like at the end. And I wondered how many dealers are, in those same shoes trying to, become more compliant and be able to fulfill that. And so that'd be great from the OE perspective to be able to start it at the top.
Yeah, I think if we can just get everybody on board, I think, there'll be, a period of time where people kind of figure things out. And, in the end, we're not talking about any change in pricing to the consumers. We're just talking about presenting it in a different way. And I don't think it means any more profitability or any less profitability for dealers. It's just going to be something that's different. And, you've got, dealers in the country who, advertise no fees. But then they've got a $800 doc fee. So, I think that this will truly kind of level things out a little bit across the country.
Yeah, well, good deal. Let's go ahead and jump in. I've got quite a bit to cover. Going to try to cover all of it today, so we can go into some other topics as well. And I'm going to jump right into Lightspeed. Let me share my screen here. All right, can you see my screen okay, Mark?
Yes, I can.
Perfect. So again, today we're looking at what does integrated accounting mean, and how do we prevent accounting issues from, we need an accounting entry basically to finish month end, instead of it just kind of flowing through the system. And so we're going to go through some pretty basic stuff, but then we're going to get really detailed probably pretty quickly. And bounce around quite a bit. So feel free, as Mark mentioned in the chat or in the Q&A, to post some questions there. We might be able to answer them live, or at the end we'll kind of pause to take some questions. So from the very beginning with Lightspeed, the way I like to look at it is looking at these menu options up here at the top. We have part, service, sales, rental. You may not have some of these, but these are all the point of sale piece of the system, or the transactional side of the system that I like to refer to as the front end. And then receivables, payables, general ledger, payroll is the back end or the accounting section of the system. And this management activity menu is what bridges the gap between what we do over here, how it gets posted, and in reports for how things happen on the back end. And so some of what we're going to look at is diving through these sections as far as when I hit this button, this is actually when an accounting entry is made versus, these other areas don't. But one thing that we're not going to be able to see on my sandbox environment here, and just going to talk for just a second. So Lightspeed has accounting built in. They also have an option that you can connect Lightspeed to QuickBooks and have an integration there. It's my opinion, and I guess our opinion of the accounting guys, that's okay, but really the accounting module in Lightspeed is better, and you'll have a better experience overall. And really, it comes down to the integrated accounting portion of it, where you have multiple people that are helping you versus just maybe one person putting in the information. And that's what we see with some other systems as well that might push things to QuickBooks. There's certain things that there's definitely benefits there. And you can find a lot of accounting support for people that know QuickBooks, where like Lightspeed, if you lose your accountant or something like that, you're probably not going to find one who's done accounting in Lightspeed, and they need to learn the system. But one thing that I would say, just kind of at the beginning, ask yourself this question: why are we even doing this, right? Why are we even keeping track of the numbers? Are we trying to just have numbers ready for a tax return, or am I actually wanting information to help manage my business? And for sure, if you're wanting the information to help guide you and manage the business, and have something where multiple people can learn the processes, the integrated accounting really is the best solution for that. And so just to show you a couple things really quick to that, under general ledger reports and profit and losses, where you'll see your profit and loss statement. I'm just going to run one really quickly here. So Lightspeed has on the P&L, we have our revenue section, our cost of goods sold section, then we have our expenses, right, that flow through to net income. And most of you are probably on Lightspeed's default chart of accounts versus a custom chart that you came in with, or that you're looking to build. If you're prospecting to see if you want to go onto Lightspeed, my suggestion would be to start with their default chart of accounts and then to customize it from there. But it is built to have a company level income statement and then department level income statements, so you can really see operationally where you're making money or losing money. And when I talk about accounting integration, revenue and cost of goods sold, these accounts really should all load from this front end menu of part, service, sales, and rental. We really shouldn't have accountants making a lot of adjustments using receivables, payables, or journal entries that would ever hit any of these accounts. And if you're doing that, that's a spot where you should stop and say, well, why am I making this entry? Is it because I'm, we don't know what to do with this in the front end? Is this part of something that we're selling? Why are we making this entry, and how repetitive is it? But really, for us, the rule is, we don't, as an accountant, I'm not going to make entries to revenue and cost of goods sold, because my front end team, they don't realize that those changes are happening, and they're managing the business a little differently. And likely, I'm actually making duplicate entries in the system, because the system is going to post things when they go and they fix things on the front end when they eventually get to it. And so all of these menus are going to have a list option, and there are settings within them in each of these that eventually they will go to the system lists. And there's three things that we're going to look at in here. So first, I'm going to start with sales types. So sales types are, go ahead, Mark.
Can I hit you with a question real quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
Can you just drop back to that profit and loss screen real quick?
Yeah. Let me find the.
So This is the structure of this accounting. For those of you who may not have heard it, is PCSAS, or this accounting structure was originally designed by Honda. And if you kind of go back to the start of it, they didn't even have an F&I department, and F&I kind of got added after the fact. And for a long time, what we've seen with dealers is that they didn't have both a sales and a cost of goods. They just had them set up under one. Uh, my time at Spader, Brian, we had always pushed our dealers to break that out and actually have a revenue side for F&I, and then a cost of goods as well for what you paid for those. And you kind of see here on the screen that you've only got that single side.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts about having a revenue and a cost of goods on F&I?
Yeah, good question. I actually agree with you. I like the idea of seeing revenue and cost of goods sold separate, because it's just like everything else, right? You can't do the same ratio and analysis when it's just being merged together, right? Like this is just margin, but if you were to do that across the board with all your accounts, then you're just missing a lot of information. And so we do help dealers with splitting that out as well. I believe Lightspeed's default chart does have the F&I department still just reflected as margin, but that's something that when you talk to them during a new conversion now, they will actually split that up for you. And we'll go over some of that today, essentially to see how can you map it to do something different. But I agree with you. I think having it be revenue and cost of goods sold split is a better representation. And it gives you a little bit better breakdown.
Yeah, we
So
actually like to be able to look at the margin that people make on F&I, because if you do that like you've got it set up on the screen here, you really can't tell what the margin is without going back and running some other reports. But being able to calculate that off the P&L, to
right.
me, is useful.
Yeah, no, I agree.
All right, thank you.
Good. Yeah, good call out there. So coming back here to sales types. So these sales types are effectively the different types of customers that you have. Some of the setting and setup in here is related to tax and how we're going to charge tax. But all of these are going to be different types of the different type of sale transaction, whether you're using part, service, sales, or rental. These become options, and some of them is some background stuff that Lightspeed has put in place where when you click a specific button or a box in here, it will automatically know what sales type to select from, or there's some default settings that you can change and alter that to have it be a specific sale type. But this is where when you're thinking about how does Lightspeed think, if Lightspeed had a brain, when I push one of the buttons in here, which we'll get to, it's first going to look at what sale type was it, and looking at the tax setup and whether it's customer pay or internal. So it's going to figure out, okay, what sale type is it? And then from there, it's going to go to these sales categories. So again, backing up just a second, all of these menus have a list. Eventually, they all point to this one list here, this determines all of the accounting that Lightspeed will post for you or is able to post for you. And so just to dig into one of these for just a second, I know we looked at this a little bit on our last webinar, but on this general tab, there's a couple of different options, whether it's a system category. These two are specific to the parts menu. If you're selling parts without a cost or something like that, there's a couple of reasons to use these, but most of them are going to be on the system category. And then this usage type determines which one of these menus you'll be able to use this category in. And Lightspeed also has some built-in logic where once I've selected certain usage types, the other ones get turned off where I can't use them there. And what I'm doing right now, you probably wouldn't do on your screen where you uncheck them and then switch it to another version. If you're going to if you need something in another area, likely you need to make another sales category for it. But you can see now that I've got this unit one selected, these ones I'm not able to select. And so this helps us identify what categories are available in these menus. There's a tab here for the category. So if in my sale type, my tax is going to be treated a certain way, but the specific item I'm selling is treated a different way, this is where you could adjust it so that it does something different. And then this GL interface is where I really want to spend a little bit of time talking about it for a second. And it looks very busy on the screen just because you have a lot of options in Lightspeed. That is the one thing where when I'm working with dealerships or talking to them about the system, often the biggest thing that I hear in feedback is there's just so much, right? There's a lot to learn. There's a lot to do in it. Lightspeed does a pretty decent job at getting you set up initially, and there is that benefit of you can customize this to let it do whatever you really want it to do. When you're looking at this screen, there's really three sections of this screen. You have your income accounts. So if I put a price on something in these menus, whether it's positive or negative, it doesn't matter. It's going to first look at that sale type that we looked at before, and then depending on what menu you're selling it in, whatever list this is in, it's looking at this menu, and then it's going to say, okay, you chose a customer taxable item using your parts menu. That's the GL account it's going to use. And so again, if I put a price on something, whether I put a positive amount or a negative amount in when I'm performing a sale, this is where it's going to direct that transaction. Down below, if I put a cost on something, here's our cost of goods sold account associated to it, and then it will use something from this top section. And so that one's a little bit harder to say just because it depends where you're at in the system. If you're in the parts menu and service menu, it's going to use this top section to pull it out of in order to record cost of goods sold. If you are looking at extras and fees and set in the sales menu, or a couple other ones inside of the sales menu, it might use this major unit special inventory section instead. But when you're looking at this, essentially, I put a price on something. Okay, this is where my accounting will go for revenue. If I put a cost on something, it's going to take it out of here, put it down into here, and so it's in those two areas. And so again, if I'm selling something, it should all flow through these menus. That way I can see who sold it, what was it, I can get the history on how often do we sell it. We just get so much more information than just making a journal entry in the back end. And so the
Right.
sales category is really the engine behind those settings. Go ahead, Mark.
You kind of almost glossed over a good little tip here. Go back to the general tab real quick.
Yeah.
One of the issues with sales categories is that once you create one, you essentially can't make it go away. But if you have one in the system you don't want to utilize, as long as nothing is directly active in inventory and pointing to that, you can do what Brian did a little while ago, and you can uncheck all those usage types. And at that point in time, it essentially makes that category go away in the system so that users can't see it and select it anymore. We typically, and Brian probably does it slightly different, but if I have a sales category that I kind of want to firewall and make it go away, can't delete it, then I'll usually put a Z in front of the code in the description. And that way it drops to the bottom of that list. So that, and then by unchecking everything, you kind of get rid of that. You don't see it in the system anymore. The other thing I just wanted to point out on the GL interface, and this is very counterintuitive, and I've got my way that I sort this out, but you have non-taxable, tax exempt, and taxable sales. And the wording that Lightspeed uses that hasn't always been consistent over the different versions of Lightspeed. And there's a little trick I've got to figure out which one of those is actually wholesale and which one is tax exempt, like government or farm and ag use. How do you tell dealers to figure that out, Brian?
For me, so we will actually either have them rename the category, or these sales types you can add more to them. Most of them tax exempt is going to be dealer to dealer or wholesale, but we actually prefer to actually name it the way that it's going to be used, just because this will flow through the other reports specifically for sales tax as well. It'll read it just like this, and if you're trying to file sales tax, you can't just say exempt. You have to know whether, just exactly what you said, if it's farm and ag, if it's government, if it's part of the Indian Reserve. There's some other exempt reasons as well that have to specifically be stated on the returns. And so grouping them all into one tax exempt, for us, we don't like to do that. We like to organize it to make sure that we can file the sales tax correctly. Apart from in reporting on the front end, being able to have a filter to split the specific sales out. If you're trying to look at just retail sales, or maybe you do want to see all of your government sales versus your dealer wholesale transactions. Does that make sense?
The accounting structure, has got wholesale GL accounts in there. And when I work with dealers, a lot of times they'll ask questions about, I've got these accounts, why aren't things hitting those? And it's just, whether it's parts and service transactions, we've got to set that up under the customer record. So if you want to go to a customer, once we've got that wholesale transaction type set up, if we've got a customer who, independent in town is doing work, under general, we want to go down to override the sale type. And then we'll want to select whatever that wholesale sale type is going to be in here. And now for that customer, when we do a parts or a service transaction, that'll actually push those transactions to our wholesale account so that we can actually see what our true margin is. And then on the sales side, it's a little bit different. You can have this set up for a customer. Doesn't always flow that way. If you go into a sales deal, let's say that you've got a unit that's paid off, you've got another dealer next town over that wants that unit for you. And so you've actually got to create a deal and sell that unit to them. You don't want that unit flowing through your GL at cost and not showing any margin. So by going into the tax type here and under that sales type, this is the one place in the sales deal where you can actually select the transaction type here. And when you do that, that will actually push that sale through your wholesale GL accounts.
Yep, perfect. So yeah, that sales type is important. And again, it links over to the category. So just staying on here for just a second, and we'll go back through this a little bit. But in sales, there's a list, and it's this major unit sales categories list. So when I open this up, when I sell that unit, this is the category that I have associated to that unit. That it's going to say, okay, what was the price? And it's going to put the transaction here for the price, dependent on my sale type. And then what was the cost? I'm going to remove it from this account and stick it into cost of goods sold. So that sale type is what identifies, okay, I'm going to use this one instead of this one. And so making sure that they use that drop-down menu to select it. And I like that you brought that up on the customer. So for parts and service, so you don't have to right click and change the sale type every time. You can set that standard customer setting. So that way it will choose those accounting options. One thing that I'll also mention here, there's another customer type field inside of the customer setting, which is more used for reporting instead of the accounting side. But it's another option to help divide out some of those customers with different reports. In certain reports, it's easier to pull the customer type than it is the sale type. But the sale type is what actually determines accounting transactions.
And you can add to that list too. I'll tell you kind of a place that's useful on that customer type is that if you've got an employee record in there, you can, every time you set up an employee with a discount, you can change their customer type to employee. And then once or twice a year, run a report, look for all of your customers who are marked as employees, make sure they're still there. And if they're not, then you've got a quick and easy way to go and find their discounts and remove those from the system.
Yep, perfect. The last list I'm going to look at here in the system, under system lists, there's tax categories. So, I know this is the most exciting topic everybody wants to hear about is tax, right? But so back to that sale type to finish, this is the engine behind the accounting. The sales category determines revenue and cost of goods sold, and the tax category determines what we're collecting. And again, there's a default category that you set up in here, and then there's a list for those tax categories where you can define, what you're supposed to collect, and is there multiple tax rates that you have. Something unique to Lightspeed that I don't believe I've seen in another system yet, but you have the ability to split out that liability into multiple accounts, whether it's specific to the parts, service, sales portion, or you can also have these jurisdictions with parts, service, sales, and rental go into their own GL accounts. And so from an accounting perspective, you have more options in here than not, and you can really organize how the tax gets collected and put to the GL to make it easy to reconcile sales tax. If you're, I'm not going to go further into that conversation with sales tax because that could be its whole probably 2 or 3 webinars. But if you're looking at your sales tax GL account and when you for June, because June is done, and you went and you made your payment and the numbers aren't the same, then you should probably reach out to us and we can help you with figuring out, how do we get it in line and make sure that you're actually paying what you're collecting, or you're not overpaying or underpaying. So again, thinking about the engine of what does Lightspeed's accounting do? It starts with the sale type, then it looks at the sales category and tax category settings to record revenue and cost of goods sold. And it's all dependent on these front end menus here. So if I've done something in receivables, payables, or general ledger, and I hit that to a revenue account or a cost of goods sold account, in my opinion, you're overriding the system. And there are reasons when you do that, but you should try to limit that as much as possible. And you can run reports here that you could see how often that's happening and maybe go into why are we doing it. So let's start to dig into these menus here for a second. Let me close all these windows. So I'm going to go kind of quickly through these just to show you what piece actually, when does the system actually make an entry. So in parts, when you do an invoice and you put your part on it and you hit this cashier button, this cashier button is what's going to determine that accounting entry. Also, if you have a special order, until you mark it picked up or refunded in here, it's just going to be sitting in just growing. So your income statement is not going to show the actual sale of that transaction in accounting until you come and you pick this up if you have any special orders. But there's an accounting entry that happens there. Parts inventory, if you're in this menu and you're searching parts and you're making changes, this will actually not do anything in accounting. This is only going to be adjusting the parts valuation reports and the parts reports. So I can come in here, I can change the quantities, I can change the cost of it, but there is not an accounting entry that is made. Even though it is tied to the sales category, the system is not going to make an entry for me. And there's a process that we do on a monthly basis to basically take care of those. In the ordering screen, there's no accounting entries that happen. When I go into receiving and pick a part to receive and I hit save, or I hit receive PO, either one of those, when I hit that button, it's creating the payable invoice for me. So it's debiting parts inventory and it's crediting a specific account for Lightspeed called parts purchases or parts packing slips. And under payables, this is kind of a holding account and it should reset every couple days. But then the accountant basically comes in to verify, yes, my parts team actually received in the right parts at the right price and they put the right information in here. And then I have the ability to add freight or discount to it. And now I have my full invoice so I can reconcile my statement. This is one of the most common areas. If you haven't worked with an accountant that knows Lightspeed and they just jump in and start doing stuff, they're not realizing that your team is receiving inventory in here. And they've been trained to go to this pay invoice screener. That one's easy enough for them to see, hey, I've got stuff in here that I can pay. I'm used to looking for an AP aging report. I can see that there's stuff in here I need to come pay, but the packing slips don't show up here. It's only in this menu or a custom report. And so those packing slips just pile up and just continue to pile up over time. And what your accountant is doing is they're making entries in here and either recording it to cost of goods sold or they're recording it to parts inventory. And so what's happening is effectively you're doubling up those entries in the system. So just keep that in mind. So again, receiving that actually has an accounting entry tied to it. Special orders, again, we talked about where this list is just showing you the information. You still have to go pick it up in order to record an entry. You can take a deposit on special orders that does have an accounting entry tied to it, but supplier returns if you're not using these. And Mark, I guess I'd ask you this question. When dealers do supplier returns, is that common? They never put it in the system? And how hard is that to get the parts managers to actually do the supplier returns, would you say?
You know, I do come across that, but I try to train dealers that as soon as you send the part back to the manufacturer or to the vendor, that you want to go ahead and create that supplier return. And then if there is a price adjustment that happens, you can always do that as an entry when you post that. But it is pretty common that dealers a lot of times will send items back to the manufacturer and then wait for the credit to come in before they actually create the supplier return. And the problem with that is that if that part gets lost, then your parts manager who's got a post-it note up on the wall says, you know, hey, I sent these items back on that day. In the end, they often get forgotten. And then, you know, you're figuring that out the next time you do a parts inventory. So, you know, even if you don't know exactly what you're going to get from the manufacturer when you do a supplier return, I think it's best that when you box that item up and you're ready to ship it out, go ahead and do the supplier return in the system and create that receivable or negative payable.
Yeah, and there should be a setting in here. So under parts lists and suppliers, I believe this carried over from NXT, and it's not always required. But in your supplier, when you do a supplier return, there's these options here where it won't make any accounting entries, or you can have it go to accounts receivable or accounts payable. Usually when we work with a new dealership, we always just go through all their suppliers and switch it to accounts payable, because we want it, just what Mark had said, we want it to show up in our accounting so that I can see that there's something that I need to look for, right? On the accounting side, on the statement, that we're getting credit for it, it's getting applied. And so that setting is something you might want to review through your suppliers and make sure that the accounts payable is there. But I agree, if something happened in real life, we should be doing something inside of the system for it. And that's what's going to help us see what to do. And so some people will say, you know, I've heard some feedback, you know, Lightspeed said that, you know, or the DMS, because this is really a problem with any DMS, you know, it said it's going to do it for me. It does if you go and push the button and tell it what you did, and it will then complete that accounting transaction or workflow, as long as you told it you did something, right? So,
Hey, Brian, Lynn just asked a question. So you do a
yeah.
supply return. Let's say that you've got a part that cost $100. You do the supply return on it. You create the negative payable. And then when you get the credit back from the manufacturer, you only get $80. How are you showing that $20 restock charge or return charge?
Yeah, so typically I would say what happens is you might make an adjustment here, depending on how big it is or how often that happens, where yes, we do just make the accounting entry and there is a specific account in here for parts adjustments that is hitting cost of goods sold. One thing that I would just look at as well is, does your parts inventory, the remaining parts inventory, is the cost set appropriately on those items? And if not, you know, some of your entry might hit parts inventory instead after you make your manual adjustment. But most of the time, I would say for simplicity, that adjustment, you then make an invoice to adjust that $20 portion and hit this adjustment account.
The other
Go
the
ahead.
other thing you can do as well is if you go to the supplier return screen, you know, a lot of times when you are going to send a part back to somebody, you know what they're going to give you for it. So if you put a part number in here, just whatever part, find something that's got a cost to it. You know, so this part right here has got a regular cost of $30, but let's say that they're going to take 20% of that as a restock charge. So they're only going to give us $24. You can put in $24 here. And then now your return is going to be aligned with the credit you're going to get from the manufacturer. And your cost of goods is going to be hit for that extra $6.
Perfect. Thanks, Mark, for that. All right. And then that's really the options where, okay, there's accounting entries that happen in the system. Parts has another menu here, which is, it's kind of parts, but it's also more just cashiering, where you can take in payments, and there's miscellaneous payments and paid outs. These are more functions of, I need to get something into the system and maybe I don't have access to all the right places for it. to make the entry. There are lists associated to these as well in the system where you can define the accounting. And so if you're wondering where these go, like you're just in these screens and you're seeing, anytime you see this drop down list, that usually means, okay, there's a system list where I can go under and see where the accounting happens. So here's my miscellaneous receipt types, here's my paid out types, and then you can jump into here and figure out where does that go, where is that pushing the accounting. From our perspective, we don't usually have, we don't prefer to have paid out types. That's when you're usually using cash a little bit more, get a business credit card and it's easier to track and manage anyways. Miscellaneous receipts, there are reasons for them to bring money in, but both of those will create an accounting entry in the system in order to get the money in, and often is adjusting what your total deposit amount is for the day.
What are your thoughts about dealers adding additional methods of payment? A lot of times you see somebody has got, let's say that they are selling shirts to advertising, and so they've got, every time they take a shirt out of the parts department, they're selling it to receivable, and then somebody has got to do a journal entry to take that from the receivable and get it to the advertising account. You can just set up a method of payment to where that item goes directly to that advertising account. What are your thoughts on doing that to kind of cut out that little step?
So I would say both accounting wise, they're going to do the same thing. And so it's more, we actually, most of our dealers, we will do the first one that you mentioned where they'll cashier it to accounts receivable, and then we make an entry once a month to clear it out, only because that's how we can get our dealers to look at it and see, how much of this are we doing every single month, and do we have a budget for it, and was this controllable, was this not controllable, and make them stop for a second to look at it. We definitely have set up method of payments to just go ahead and write it off so that your P&L doesn't show extra income until the end of the month when you make your entry. The only thing I would say there, or caution you there, is the controller should hopefully be reviewing that or bringing that up in the management meeting either once a week or every couple of weeks, so that you just don't forget to look at it, and have that conversation about how much stuff is getting sent to that account, and are we doing anything to manage the expectations. But both of those from an accounting perspective will work. It's just more, how do you incorporate that inside of your management review is what I would say. Anything you'd add, I guess, hearing that?
As I was answering a question online, can you state the question again?
I was just saying that you can do it either way, where you go to accounts receivable or directly send it to the expense, but we typically put it in accounts receivable first, just to stop management for a second so that they have to look at it. Or in the management meeting, your controller is going to have to look at that account, or somebody's going to have to pull up that account to talk about what's hitting those accounts. So for me, as long as you're reviewing those type of items, it doesn't matter necessarily which one you put it in, but it will stand out if you put it in accounts receivable. It'll force you to have to look at it. Any other thoughts?
I'm just personally, I'm all about trying to use the system to streamline the workflow, and I would much rather, instead of having somebody having to adjust those out at the end of the month, just add it into our workflow to where, once a month we're printing out all the entries to that policy or advertising account and just reviewing them on a single statement.
Yeah. So that's a perfect example of how Lightspeed is nice, because you do have the preferences, right? You have the ability to switch which way you're going to do it depending on how you manage or how you choose to lead in the department. And so if you've never questioned a process in Lightspeed, like, is this really best for my leadership team? You just thought this is the way that Lightspeed does it, and I don't like the way that Lightspeed does it. We do it a different way. Bring that up. If you're part of any of our other webinars or this one, say, hey, is there another way to do this? And we can show you a couple of different ways and give you some input. But again, it's more, what is that management team going to do to manage that process and expectation? And you might want it to be the direct write-off method, or the method that is a different, where it goes to accounts receivable first. So great insight there, Mark.
I would, if, let's say that you've got 5 accounts you want to review every month, I would build a custom report that just pulled those 5. I would schedule it to run automatically on the 1st of every month, and then you don't even have to, it's really quick and simple to grab that information.
Yeah, good point there. All right, let's move over to service for a second. I'm gonna go ahead and close all my windows.
I will say
So
there is one place though that I am strongly against allowing direct charges to, and that is if a dealer has an in-house PM program, never allowing the service department to be able to charge off maintenance plan work to an internal account. So I think there always needs to be a layer of separation there, because anytime I've ever seen a dealer that allows the service manager, the service writer to charge off maintenance work to an AR account, it always turns into a slush fund.
gotcha. Yeah, good insight there. All right, so in service, these first options are just helping you create a new one. But let's go ahead and just open up a repair order that we have. And until the work order becomes a repair order, there's no accounting entries at all. Once you're in here and you sell parts to it, it might make an accounting entry. That's a setting in your system where you can choose whether it's going to make an accounting entry or not, to just move inventory from active inventory to work in process inventory. Or it will wait until you cashier the repair order to record that internal transaction. Also on labor, technicians put in their time in here as they're clocking in and clocking out. The system does not accrue their labor yet. I actually saw something recently that Lightspeed might be working on something with that, but as of right now, it does not accrue what you have to pay your technician. But what it can do is it can take the portion that they put their time on, or the hours that you have selected here, and it will record a cost of goods sold entry. And there's some options with that one. That this is a little bit bigger conversation as well, whether you're actually treating WIP labor as an asset account, or a lot of our clients, we just have a contra expense account, so it credits the expense account and debits cost of goods sold, so it's all just on the P&L. But again, that's a lot bigger conversation. But Lightspeed does not accrue the WIP labor payroll entry. It just posts the cost of goods sold. On the sublet tab, if you have a sublet, the important piece to know here is you set up the vendor, and here's the price you're charging the customer. Down below is what you're going to pay for it, and the vendor that you select. And so if you're accountant, recording payments, you're paying some of your sublet vendors, and you don't have an invoice sitting inside of that vendor, it's probably pretty quick for you to think, oh, I'll just make my invoice. My invoice wasn't here. I can post that to sublet cost of goods sold. But then down the road, when service actually gets around to completing all the tasks inside the repair order and cashiering it, it's going to create another invoice for that same sublet vendor. And now I've got two that are in there. So instead, what you should do is, if you're missing that sublet invoice in that vendor, is communicate that with service that, hey, I need this invoice in order to pay it, and I don't see it in the vendor, so that they can come in here, and when they hit the sublet close button, that's what creates the journal entry to create your invoice for you. Go ahead.
I can tell you, at our dealership, we will not cut that check for the sublet work until the service department brings us a copy of the RO that shows that they've added the sublet line to it. And I think isn't there a setting in here that forces you to add a cost to sublet?
I don't know if there is a setting. I haven't looked at that. It says right here. So it says that it system is configured to require cost, but
yes.
I probably have never noticed it because we always have full access. So
I think it's in system preferences.
Yeah, let's go take a look at service, and probably this one. Sublet set cost is probably the field. Yeah, I didn't know that was there. So yeah, that's a good call out there to make sure that they put the cost on it. Going back into here under warranty, you'll put warranty. Go ahead.
Actually, if you jump to system preferences real quick.
Okay.
And go to repair order. Oh, comes my cat. Right down there, you'll see there's a line that says required
Oh, right
cost
here.
and sublet lines. And so, yeah, you can have that.
Okay.
And so it makes sure that those, if you're giving out those checks before you've seen that work is on there, it does require them to put some cost on the sublet so they're not just cashiering them out at 100% margin.
Perfect. Good call out there. All right. So back to the repair order. You have the information where you put the warranty. And what I see a lot of dealers doing here is they're waiting to cashier the repair order until they know they got paid for the warranty. But that's not really how Lightspeed is set up and designed. It's actually set up to help you manage it a little bit better. Where once you hit this cashier button, that cashier button is what's going to record revenue and cost of goods sold. And if you have a warranty item on it, it's going to automatically send it through the warranty process. And under service, there is a separate list here for warranty claims, where now that it's here, we can see when did I process this with the manufacturer, when did I receive credit and it's been showed resolved, what did I get paid versus what I didn't get paid. And there's an accounting tab here where it will define where this goes. And again, in here, this is displaying an accounting setting that was built under system, lists, and warranty companies, where you identify this is the write-off account if I don't get paid. Here's the standard labor rate, and in here I can select I want my warranty to either show up in accounts receivable, or I want it to show up in accounts payable, or I want it to go to a clearing account essentially to track where those dollars are going to be received from. And so this is the settings for the warranty company. We typically, if you're using those warranty credits on your parts statement, we'll set it up as accounts payable. You know, technically, it is a receivable, and so yes, it could be an accounts receivable, and then you have to move it to accounts payable. But that, back to your point earlier, Mark, that creates an extra step in accounting to have to move the balances. So if you didn't know, you can choose that option in the system to have it go to payables or receivables, so that it's already in the screen you need to apply it in.
Make a quick point, and I got a question from one of the viewers. Go back to the warranty claim in Lightspeed.
Yeah.
Go back, not go into the repair order. Sorry.
In the repair order.
Yeah. One of the things that catches dealers out under job general is that when you click that warranty button right there, if you have parts that are sold to this repair order, the system actually creates 2 dummy invoices on the back end. When you have something that's not warranty and you go to change the repair order type to warranty, it actually creates an invoice where it unsells the parts. Then the status of the RO is changed to warranty, and then the system actually resells the parts to the ticket. And so, we've seen a lot of times dealers will go to reprint invoices, and they don't understand why there's all these in and out invoices. And every time you change that ticket to warranty, it takes them out and puts them back in. And, it's kind of created some confusion with some dealers about figuring out what their fill rate is in parts to the service department, because you've got a lot of these additional transactions that really need to be extracted out of there. But Lynn had a question and said, talking about labor in a repair order, do most people close their labor out when each job is done in the repair order?
I'll actually ask you that question. Let you answer that one.
My recommendation is that you, at the end of every day, if you want your reporting out of Lightspeed to be correct, is that as your technicians leave for the day, they need to check in with the service writer or the service manager. And then you go through every ticket that they worked on that day and you close out what needs to be closed out. So you credit what time needs to be credited. If they had a 4-hour service and they've got 2 hours of it done, then let's go ahead and create a labor session for a couple hours on that. And then we can do another one when they actually finish it out. But we really only want to completely close out that labor line once all the work has been done. But we want to try to get those labor sessions in there. That way our productivity and our efficiency reporting is correct.
And I would say, a similar thing where, that's the opportunity for them to actually see if something's going to go wrong. Did we misquote this? Do I need to talk to the customer again? And also just rating the technician, right, on how long they're taking. If you're only closing out the sublet line when it's all completed, and all of them all at once, you're probably going to have less opportunities for those coaching sessions. But back to Mark's point, the best reporting is going through and having that process where you're having those sessions, so you have the clock in, the clock out. You can see those metrics. Again, there's not an accounting entry at all that happens in the system when you close out labor. The only time there's an accounting entry is when you hit this cashier button in the system. So apart from the selling parts, that there might be an entry. Anything else on any other questions there?
Yeah, John asked, John asked, is there a place in Lightspeed to flag the deductible on a warranty claim so customers informed at time of claim? I think a lot of dealers are utilizing the miscellaneous charges for that, but if you kind of want to show how that works.
I haven't used it that much, but I know that there's this field. Have you used this, Mark, before?
You know, the one that I typically see dealers utilize is under the job general. Is those miscellaneous charges right there in the center. Typically dealers will go and set one of those up to be a warranty deductible. And you would do that under system preferences. So if we go to our, what's the automatic calculator, or I forget which
under
one it
RO
is.
misc charges. Yes, under service RO misc charges.
Okay.
And so this is what the descriptive line will say on the RO. And then this is the sales category again that you tie to that item for your entry, depending on what you have in there. And
But there is,
go ahead.
You showed it under the warranty section. There is a deductible button under there.
Yeah, there's a deductible field. I've never used it. This is the one area where I've never used it, but I know it's in there. And I would imagine it's actually gonna turn it to where the customer pays for that $100, and then you cashier the rest of it to the receivable. But I haven't used that before.
I would bet if you go to the warranty company, are we able to map the
deductible?
You've got it open over there on the left. Are we able
right
to
here.
map where that? Yeah, okay. So we could set a default deductible for a warranty company. Let's say at BRP, it's always $50.
Yeah.
And then yeah.
So maybe test that out. I believe that's how that works. This is another perfect example of when there's something new that you're learning in Lightspeed, like we are seeing this kind of right now. Click on this Get Help button and just type warranty deductible, and then it will walk you through what is the system doing on that. And so you can see, you can obviously chat with Lightspeed as well in there too, but reading that knowledge document on what that deductible will do.
April said, we use the deductible field when doing warranty because it also takes the deductible off the balance that pushes to the warranty claims list.
Yeah, and that's what would make sense to me, because it effectively is going to be charged to the customer, I believe. So yeah, so here I have this total due is now $100 on my repair order because I put that deductible in. So I'm going to collect that from the customer, and the rest of it is going to go into my warranty claim list on my warranty.
That would be a better place, I would think, to use than one of those miscellaneous charge lines, because then you really wouldn't have any additional settings that you did. And the problem with those miscellaneous charge lines is you only got 4 of them. You really wouldn't want to waste one if you don't have to.
Yep. So perfect. I believe we've talked about the accounting entries. It has a spot here for making, taking a deposit on the repair order. I'm not going to dig into there's a setting where you can send an email with a click to pay link in it so that customers can make a deposit or make a payment on something. I don't have those settings in my system to see it, but again, thinking back to the beginning, when does it hit revenue? When does it hit cost of goods sold? Like when does it show up? I've got to hit this cashier button in service. Updating labor paid doesn't do anything with accounting. Technician time entry doesn't do anything with accounting. The scheduling reports don't, and we already talked about warranty claims just a little bit. One thing I do want to mention while we're here on warranty claims, um, the default screen is looking at the warranty claims that have not been processed or resolved. And then this is just a filter. So if I've clicked into one of these and I've checked processed, there's no accounting entry. When I check resolved, it's wanting the balance to go to zero, which means I can send that to accounts receivable or accounts payable. And it's basically moving it from one uh, warranty scheduled account to a different account. It is possible that you got paid more than what you submitted the claim for, and you shouldn't necessarily reverse the repair order and rework it and change it and put it in here. It's built right here where I can say I got paid more, but instead of leaving this as a negative, in the not paid section is where you reconcile it, and get this to be zero, and that will make the accounting entry against the policy expense account. Now, back to the screen, you might, when you come to your warranty claim list, when you check your processed and resolved, you'll see if you have anything that's negative in here. So all these will just be sitting on your balance sheet, and they're just part of the schedule, and you need to capture that income that you haven't recorded yet. So you can go through and clear these out by doing the same thing, opening it up, doing the negative or positive in this not paid column to get it to show zero, and then hit save, and that save button records that journal entry. All right, moving over to sales deals here. So all of these are options to build a new one. Looking in the sales deal itself, you can take a deposit, whether you're using this button or this button to take a deposit, or you hit this button to record the deposit. This will display your deposits. As you add a unit, as you add parts, as you add options, no accounting entries are being made, right? Once you hit this finalize button, that's when the accounting will happen. So it's very possible that you have your sales team or the sales managers, they're going through and they're recording a deposit, and they're reconciling the deal and seeing that all the numbers match up, and you're receiving all of that cash, and you're able to reconcile the cash, but you don't have any revenue posted, and all of those units are still sitting in inventory. And so you got to make sure that you're going through your deal list and hitting that finalize button. And as Mark pointed out, in here you can switch the cell types on that deal to switch them. Maybe going back real quick on these in parts, if you right click, you can change your sales type to select a different type. To Mark's point, you can choose that on the customer. Also in service, you do have some options depending on what button you click, it just automatically does it. But you have this cell type. So once I chose warranty, it's looking in my sales type menu for only warranty cell types. And you can have multiple, but usually don't. But this is where you would change it on service. Let me see if I've got anything else on sales that I was going to look at. So sales has some more options. So this is selling the unit, and then you have fees and extras that are displayed in the deal. If I go under sales and lists and extras and fees, this is where you set up what you can sell in addition to the unit and parts and service. I always right click and add the number here just so you can see the actual order of what these things are. And if you put it as a product, it'll show up as an extra. If you put it as a fee, it'll show up as a fee. You can assign it whether it's front end or back end. And all of these are available inside of the major unit sales category for you to define the sales category for where it sends accounting. So most of the time when you're set up in Lightspeed, when you're going through steps, they call it steps. When you're going through onboarding, you go in and you say, these are the makes and models that I sell. These are the additional items I want on my sales deal. And so you start to build this extras and fee structure. And there's an option there that not a lot of people are aware of, where it asks you, is this a multiple provider line where you're going to, you have multiple vendors that you use? Do you want it to go into accounts receivable or accounts payable? or a non-scheduled account is essentially what it's trying to ask you. And most of the time what I find is, again, whoever filled out that steps project may or may not have included the accountant in that conversation. But this is really an accounting workflow, a process that you're looking at. And so you can define, you can have a sales category set up for the specific brand or type and have as many as you want so that it will automatically create those invoices to the right place for you. Or you can also just check this multiple provider line, and on a deal, when you go down to the unit level, as part of their finalization process, when you select that item, then they can say, I want this to go to accounts receivable or accounts payable, and select where it goes. And so you have some options there to have it be automated. It takes a little bit of effort, a little bit extra work to have that be automated. Or you can, again, just make it be an option where people can choose. But go ahead.
Can I point out two things?
Yeah.
This is your tip, so I'm not stealing it, but under this extras and fees, if you click on the menu item,
The list.
over on the left. So, you always show dealers that you've got to right click on that title bar up top to get that the extra line numbers to show up, so they don't do that automatically. And this really is the best place to come, so you know exactly what is extra line 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This extras and fees screen is actually unique in the system. It is the only screen like this that when you go to close it, it tries to save. And if every time you come in, you have to right click on that title bar and add that number field over there, it's because you haven't used that mapping type over on the right. So if you look down, you've got the mapping type for credit card fees, service contracts, and all that. If you change one of those, see if you can change one to a blank. Will let you just click the delete.
It has undefined.
Hit the delete key though, see if it'll let you leave one blank.
Yeah, it doesn't
look
like it lets me leave blank, but you could check and uncheck one too, I think. And then
if every time you come in here, so right here, if you've got one that's undefined, you're going to get this message in here. And if you just bypass this every time, then every time you come back into the screen, you've got to re-enable those extra line numbers again. But if you just want to go ahead one time and use that mapping, as soon as you do that, when you exit out of here, it'll save those settings. And then when you come back in again, you'll be able to see those. The other one that I run into all the time is if you go to a major unit inventory record, maybe you have a solution for this. I don't think we've ever talked about it before, but you have the ability, the system asks for the manufacturer. So right above where it says Polaris, and, I've run into some situations with dealers where they may have had somebody who fat fingered that make in that drop down. And so the manufacturer for something might actually be Kawasaki. Like in this situation here, you could put Kawasaki in here. And so if you do that, when this deal was finalized with this unit on there, the accounting entries are going to be made to Polaris. But if you ran a custom report looking at sales in the sales department and you had selected manufacturer in there to sort that by, this report would show up under Kawasaki. And so sometimes dealers are trying to get those two to match. And it's been a common issue that I've found is that they're just not paying good attention when they're loading the inventory in here. And I do think if you go to, it's under there's a report under the general ledgers for the scheduled. So if you do your major unit one under here, and then over on the right, I think you'll have to run it. I need to see what it looks like. I think you do it as detail. If you just run that to the screen, in the drop down over on the right, do it as summary. And then scroll down a little bit and get down to your major unit inventory records. So you can actually look on this. And so like right there would be a good example. We're in account number 23320, which should be Grady White. but you can see that we've got different makes are selected down there, and this is a test database. But all those entries that show up on the screen that are not actually Grady White, you'd want to go back through because they probably don't have the right unit sales category selected in the make unit inventory screen.
Yeah, perfect. So two things here. This make one, this will actually define sublet work on where that goes. And then on the sales deal for revenue COGS and where the inventory sits, it says sales category here, but it really means major unit sales category. And anytime you see this little button, this is a list button. If you click on it, it will take you to that list. So you can see what's available. So you don't have to go and navigate to it. But the other information up above is mostly informational. And like what Mark said, you can run it in that custom report. But these two fields right here do impact where it goes in accounting. And then also staying on the unit, when you add cost, when you hit this update AP button, that is what's going to debit inventory credit AP. You can actually automatically get this to load if you have floored units inside of your major unit sales category. You define who your vendor is and freight, and there's a couple other settings in here. But if you define the vendor, then when you select that category, then you hit update AP, saves you a couple clicks from having to pick the vendor into this screen, which is nice. One other thing to go ahead.
I was just going to say, and if you go under sales and make sure unit receiving, you probably don't have it set up in here yet. But Lightspeed has got this working recently. Now, if you have inventory that's floored to Wells Fargo, Yamaha, or Honda, I believe are the only ones that are set up right now, you actually have to reach out to Lightspeed and you have to give them your Lightspeed CMF number and you have to give them your Wells Fargo comms numbers. They have a separate database they need to update. Once that's done and you've enabled the subscription in Lightspeed, which is no cost, you will start having usually about a week out before you get inventory. They will start to populate in the screen. So now you don't have to go in and manually build all your major inventory. It's flowing in here automatically.
Yeah, and it will add that invoice. And I believe there's an option for you to, I mean, you can add the invoice or update the AP from here. But that should be tied to stocking in the inventory, right? So related, back to the accounting conversation, we've talked a lot about the buttons that hopefully the front end staff are pushing for us, and accounting is more reviewing versus putting all the information into the P&L. So you can divide out some of that work. But yeah, thanks for that call out here, because that definitely will speed up the process by getting that connected. Going back to the unit, there's a discount tab on here, and where you put in the rebates and holdback. It's my opinion, and I'm interested to hear your take on it as well, Mark, that you definitely should be tracking rebates and holdbacks on the unit so that you can see the right margin that you're receiving. But apart from that, this is what it will create an accounting entry, and you have the option to have it go into accounts receivable or accounts payable as well, where then your accountant can actually make sure you got the money. A lot of dealers I work with are like, I'm not going to put that in there. It just takes extra effort. And they think they have a well-designed process. In almost every case that I've worked on with the dealership, when we start actually putting it in here, they find out that they actually weren't getting paid because it forces the accountant to have to go through and look at them and verify them. But what are your thoughts related to putting rebates and holdbacks on the unit itself?
Oh, 100%. So I would never, we've kind of got a multi-step process of Woods where a couple of people check that and make sure that everything is in there. We really do it because we pay on holdback and rebates, but you have some dealers that don't want to put holdback in here because they don't want to pay commissions on that. But there actually is a quick workaround for that if you go back to your major unit sales categories. So you can actually say whether you want holdback or rebates to impact or not impact commissions. So you can still book your holdback and your rebates in the system, but if you don't want to pay commissions on those, you don't have to. So not really a good excuse for not putting that information into Lightspeed. And I think one of the problems that we're running into today, though, Brian, is that you've got a company like BRP. If we sell a vehicle from BRP today, we really don't know exactly what we're going to make on that vehicle for 3 or 4 months. And so you don't know if you're going to get 0% holdback or you're going to get 6.5 or 7%. I think what we're finding is that most dealers kind of do the math and figure out here's where we're probably going to land. It's going to be 4 or 5%. And that's what they're setting their holdback accrual up for at that period of time. And then you're just having to do an adjusting entry when you're actually getting paid your holdback.
And I would agree with that. I think if you do that, your adjusting entry should be a lot smaller than if you're only getting paid you're getting paid once a quarter for those, or once a month for depending on what the incentives are. You're going to have one big fat entry that hits your P&L that doesn't line up with all the rest of the sales, and it's not going to be specific to the make or unit type unless you do a lot of accounting effort to get it there. And so I would agree if you have a good estimate of what you're going to have to put it in there. Again, it's going to trigger that your accountant actually looks for that much money. And so if we didn't get paid that, then we can talk about how we're estimating it. But one thing that just to point out here, so everything, this year-end discounts, I don't see a lot of people actually put the specific item here. It's usually the holdback or manufacturer to dealer rebate. Price protection also works the same, where I can have it go to accounts receivable or accounts payable to then offset depending on how I get paid for that. Manufacturer to customer rebate is the only one that works different. It doesn't allow you to put it into a schedule. So we will actually make an extra line as a customer rebate. So that way we can map it and have it go into a schedule. And so if you again, I'm not gonna be able to go through every little option necessarily, but if you're saying, hey, I want this to show up in accounts receivable or accounts payable, there's likely an option, and so reach out to us. We can help you identify or remap it to go that way. But we put customer rebates in as an extra line. One second here. Last thing.
I was just
What?
gonna
Yeah,
say go back to that the major unit sales category. We were actually there a second ago. It was one of the go to the major unit. Oh yeah, it actually was the major unit, and then go to your discounts. I actually had a dealer who wanted to do an accrual of a couple of percentage points of I think we were doing it of the invoice or the retail amount. And they were trying to figure out kind of an automated way to do that. And what we actually started doing, because they weren't using that year-end discount amount, is what we started putting a -2% in there. So if you can actually put a -2% in there. And so now what happens is when you finalize that deal, we had that year-end discount set up to a sales category, and it was actually creating that accrual they wanted to do for kind of like Goodwill. They wanted to set aside a little bit of money every time they finalized the deal, and we were able to do that negative amount to create that accrual automatically.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's interesting. There's not a lot of places where you can do negatives. So I like that you pointed that out, that this one, it is one option. One more thing on the unit, on the purchasing tab. I know a lot of dealers talk about pack, probably another conversation for another day. However, for me, there's a hard pack and a soft pack. A hard pack means I've actually made an entry in my system for it, probably hitting this update AP button and creating another invoice and then doing something with it afterwards. But this Lightspeed has this pack amount here, which I consider a soft pack because it shows on the unit and on the deal and impacts the deal, but no accounting actually happens with this item. So you're still able to make sure that you're potentially paying commissions correctly. I know there's preferences on whether you should use pack or not. Maybe I'll ask you, Mark, to give 2 cents there. But if you're going to use a pack, in our opinion, this is going to cause less accounting errors, and it's easier to manage versus if you're using a hard pack and you're making adjustments. You have to do multiple steps in order to change those items and have to really be on top of the accounting end of it to make sure that it's right. But any quick little thoughts on pack before we move to the next item?
I would just tell you personally, I'm 100% like hardcore to the bone against PAC. I don't believe in it, and at least for my decade of doing 20 groups, the primary reason that I found that dealers wanted to utilize PAC is because they had a pay plan that maybe they'd set up a long time ago, not accounting for the current price or cost of units or the margins they were making. And so they were trying to figure out how to reduce the commissions of employees without adjusting the pay plan. I just tend to find that for the majority of dealers that are utilizing PAC, it's because they have pay plan adjustments that need to be made, and they're not willing to do those. So I don't believe in PAC. I don't like it. I don't promote it.
Gotcha. Perfect.
Uh,
And
Lynn did have a question for you. You said,
yeah,
where, and I think you touched on this, but where do you generally post your holdback or rebates, to AR or AP?
generally it depends on how we get paid. So usually it's AP, and what we try to do is put warranty claims and rebates and holdbacks inside of the parts vendor. We will have a vendor for parts and the parts statement, and we'll have another vendor for flooring. And we encourage our dealers to use those credits towards parts instead of the unit. Partially, one, because of cash flow, but two, the system just flows better that way, and so it creates less entries. But if they actually send you a check for payment, then I would put that to accounts receivable. And then as you receive the check, you can do a miscellaneous receipt against it to apply it. But it's just depending on, do you get to apply those against statements, or do they actually send you a check?
It
But
might add a
both
little
are
bit,
correct.
might add a little bit more complexity, and interested to know your thoughts on this. We actually break those up. So we have rebates goes to one account and holdback goes to a separate one, just because, kind of doing a lot of volume, you get a lot of entries in there, and typically rebates are one for one, but holdback these days is tough to kind of pre-calculate. So we like to have it separate.
Yeah, that can happen as well. You might, if you have it separate, you might have them in customers instead, and then you move them to AP. Um, if you are applying them that way, the system will give you the line item with the description, so you know whether it's holdback or whether it's rebate. But it comes down to um, your process. For us, whenever we're reconciling statements, we always pull something out and put it into Excel anyway, so it's easy to separate things. But you might not want to have to do that, so you can just separate that with another customer or another vendor in order to see those. So that's, it comes down to preference, I'd say, on how you run it. But
We probably went too granular, but I've got, a separate account on our GL for rebates by OE and holdback by OE.
yeah, and you bring up a good point. I mean, too granular, it all depends on management, right? On how you're going to use it. And this is another little area that we were going to cover today. So your balance sheet and your P&L, your chart of accounts, we talked about Lightspeed has a default chart. They're going to give you one accounts receivable account in one warranty receivable account. But you have the ability to add as many receivable account scheduled accounts as you want, or warranty as you want. And then the customer or the warranty company, there's a setting in it that you can define where you want that balance to live. And so operationally, if you're using your balance sheet to run the business, you might want more accounts, just so that at a glance you can get an idea of, the change month to month. Do I feel like this amount makes sense and is reasonable? And if you're if you're not in the business necessarily all the time, just being able to have somebody send you a balance sheet, you can get most of the information from it. Or you can run reports, right? Other reports that are within the system in this receivable, where we mentioned before, I've got the customer types in down here, where I can say what ones I want to look at. So it can still be in the same GL account, but I could split it out if I wanted to. So that's all customizable. I like to separate it. I like more detail. So typically we will split out contracts in transit from regular receivables. Employee is another one that will split out. Intercompany accounts will split out. The internal write-off accounts that we talked about will split out, because when I'm looking at those accounts, I'm thinking about how often does it get cleared out, and they have a different life cycle, and that, for me, that's what kind of determines that, as well as being able to just do more cash flow analysis on how are we collecting on our actual customers. And contracts in transit, that should reset every 3, 4, 5 days maybe. But this one is, regular accounts receivable is a little different. So you can customize that and have as many as you want. That's another huge benefit in my eyes why Lightspeed with the integrated accounting and the settings, it gives you more options where if you're in QuickBooks or you're using the Lightspeed integration to QuickBooks, it just goes to one GL account and you can't split it out, and you can't get some of that same visibility. We do the same thing on the payable side where we have, where did this go?
I got one other quick tip when you're done with this.
Okay. On the payable side, you will have a default account, be this 30,000. We like to separate flooring to have its own line, as well as your factory or the parts vendors have that in its own line, potentially intercompany as well. Again, if I can look at this number and I know exactly what it is, maybe you don't need another account. But if I want to be able to just from a gut check say, do I think this number is real? I need to divide that out a little bit more. That might be a reason to split it up. Or I like to look at my floored balance against my major unit inventory balance and see how much inventory we own roughly, and things like that. Go ahead, Mark. What was your item you were going to look at?
I was just going to point out, accountants, if you are, go to sales categories real quick. We're going to bounce to 2 different places real quick. If you are seeing a lot of oddball sales categories that are being created for parts and accessory counts, if you go to under parts list and either suppliers or vendors, I think it's suppliers, and you just go into any one of these, there is an option right to the left or right to the right of the default category that says use price book category. You probably have that turned on for one of your suppliers. I would strongly recommend that nobody ever use that because the manufacturers have hundreds of different categories they utilize. They don't often make a lot of sense. They make sense to them, not sense to us. But if you have that enabled, every time something comes into the system, a part number that you've never had before, if it's got a manufacturer defined category, then the system will create a new one for that item. So if you're kind of seeing a lot of those sales categories are being created and you don't know where they're coming from, that's probably what's driving that.
Yeah, good point. And that leads us to a question about when I have those categories and all of a sudden, Brian told me when I'm making these invoices, it's going to record these accounting entries and they're not happening. It's very possible that your system will look like mine. We're in the bottom right-hand corner. You'll see this little red light. So this red light is basically saying there's a management activity document. Something from the front end tried to go to the back end and it didn't because we're missing something. And so to show you in this screen, you can uncheck the successful documents. You can see, okay, these ones weren't able to post. And you can open the document to review it and see what's in there. You can also click on this little black arrow and it will tell you this category doesn't have something assigned. And you might find yourself, oh, this is a random parts category that none of the mapping was set up to work. And so you can map it and then you can save it, you can post it, or you can make sure the part gets put to the right category before it gets posted. But there is a step in here that it's making sure that everything that you sell in here has a defined accounting rule to go and post it to. And then just keep in mind, you can have people that set stuff up in here and select the wrong category. So here I have BMW motorcycles, but it's linked to my Kawasaki motorcycle sales category. And so that's going to send the accounting through Kawasaki instead of BMW. All of these extra lines, I have extra line 4, which based on my list over here, extra line 4 says credit card charges, but in this list, I can put that to whatever I want it to be, and it will go somewhere else. And so maybe reviewing some of the lists in here might be worth it if you're seeing things are going to the wrong spot. There's some reports you can build to review those things. Again, when you first set up Lightspeed does a pretty good job at getting things organized for you. and it's usually after the fact when you go to add another brand. Somebody might have hit duplicate and just changed the name and didn't go back in and change all the other categories that are associated to it. But those lists are going to point you in the direction of where the accounting goes, and you can really see that on this management activity document. If I go to any of these that are successful, if I want to look at just a deal that I've got in here, when I double click on this line, it will show me this is the unit that was sold. Here's all the accounting that took place because it was this sales type and it got this category from this category, which and that determined the final GL account. And so this is our sales category. This is our major unit sales category. And so again, this will only show up if it's a unit, but if it's a part, you can see the category that was assigned to it, and it because of the sales type, it chose that GL. And so this will help you learn the accounting, or you can go back to what you need to map and change and adjust. If you're making accounting entries at the end of the month because they're going to the wrong spots, and so you're making a journal entry every month, that's a symptom of you need to map something different. You really shouldn't be making entries here. And there are other systems that kind of in this process here. I hear dealers talk about it all the time, where it's like, well, I would rather it just send it here and then I can review it and then I post it. And in my opinion, that just slows the business down a lot. I actually really like how Lightspeed has this one set up where it just, if I've done my job as the controller, or whoever the data champion is with Lightspeed of organizing how everything is going to post, and Lightspeed again will help you do that. I don't have to sit and watch every transaction because it's going to push it through for me, and then I can just review things on the financial statements, and I can have up-to-date accounting. So data gets old really fast, and the value of the information we see gets less and less valuable, the older it gets. And having the ability to just run this P&L, in the middle of the day, at the end of the day, and I can see the numbers changing, is extremely valuable. I have so many dealers that I don't know how they continue to be in business. That, I mean, they just continue to run it by gut and kind of look at their bank account and just see numbers going up and down. And as long as I keep, roughly this much money in my bank account, I know I'm good. And they're a month or 2 months behind on accounting, because they're waiting for that accountant to come and verify all those entries or go post all those entries. Really, the idea is with integrated accounting, as long as the front end staff are doing their job of pushing the buttons with the customers, recording the sales, I can run that P&L and I can see margin every day and watch how it's moving. And then, you can see if there's something that, somebody input incorrectly, or, something went crazy on a deal or something like that. You actually get to see that visibility, and probably have time to do something with it, versus if you're a month or two in the past, it might be long gone in the opportunity.
Hey, Brian,
Go ahead.
we're getting pretty close to our cutoff here, but I just wanted to show everybody a couple of things, if you don't mind.
Sure.
I mean to cut you off there.
Go ahead.
So just a couple of other tips or tricks. If you can go back to system list and sales category and just go into any sales category. All my time, and go to the GL interface. All my time in 20 groups, when I would hear dealers say, well, the system is making mistakes or it's making errors, it's not posting things correctly. The majority of times, whenever I dug into one of those, what I typically found was that the sales categories were not set up correctly. So if somebody had not known what they were doing, they had fat figured something, they had put, cost of goods in there twice, or revenue accounts in a couple of times. I've seen parts that when they were cashiered out, they were crediting labor. To me, a lot of the issues that happen within the sales category. And I think Brian has kind of created a process that can help dealers to somewhat audit these. But, one of the nice things, and I think a lot of people kind of overlook this, but you don't have to go through and build every one of these and correct every one of these individually. Once you get one of these sales categories exactly where you want it, up at the top of the screen, you've got that copy GL interface. So you can say, okay, this is going to be my template category. And now you've got the ability to say, I want to duplicate the settings on this category to all these other accounts. And then you select all those accounts. And once you run that, it'll take the settings for the category that you've got on the screen, and it will apply it to all those other accounts that you've selected.
Yeah, I like that.
So big time saver. And then the other one too is if you go back to sales list and make sure you're getting sales categories. And I just kind of went through this personally, but a lot of times dealers have had a lot of different people working in the systems over the years, and maybe they haven't been consistent. They haven't done things nicely. I had a dealer that all those extra lines, they weren't nice and clean like Brian's are here. They weren't EL1, EL2. They were EL1, BM3, GS7. And those extra lines are actually not directly linked to the category that you see on the screen. They're linked to kind of a unique identifier for each one of those categories on the back end. If you want to clean up your sales categories and kind of make them a little bit more consistent and look a little bit better, you can go into, you don't really have any like that are out of sequence here, but you could go into EL7 in your sales category, and you can change the category. You could change that to EL25 if you want. I don't think you can make it something else, and then save that. And so now if you go back to that sales category, you've got to close it and then reopen it.
Yeah, so just to show it here, here's where it was in EL15. And then now it's saying it's EL25.
Yeah, so you can go in and you can fix those sales categories on the back end of your system and not have to come in and remap all these. So you can kind of start to clean things up and make them look a little bit better.
Yeah, and I would say that's probably where the mapping gets awry or changed is they think by coming in here and changing the name on this, that's all they have to do. But if you move this from this slot to this slot, you really have to go through your categories and make sure that they're pointed to the right place. Adding something here, that will allow you in a sales deal to see that line and go put stuff into it. But that doesn't mean the accounting has been assigned for that item. So you might want to do a quick little audit to see, what are my extras and fees in this list, and do those match up with where I'm telling the accounting to go for those items. Good. So we are a little bit past time. There's a couple more things I want to show to get through. Mark, if you've got to go, you're free to go when you're ready. But let me just.
I was just going to say, I think the one thing that a lot of dealers overlook when they are trying to clean up those extra lines and maybe end up moving things around, a lot of people forget that the forms generator is designed to print out, the way that your system is constructed today. So if you move your ESCs from extra line 4 to extra line 9, you've got a good probability that the next time that your finance manager goes to print out paperwork, that it's not going to print out correctly anymore. So making changes to those extra lines has a lot of repercussions if you don't think it all the way through.
Yeah, good call out there. One more thing related to deals and units. So under sales list and unit types, again, trying to make it easy on your sales staff here. There's settings in here that you set if there's a specific tax category override. But apart from that, on extras and fees, you can load, if it's the same amount every time, you can put the retail price in or the cost in. So that way it's just loading into the deal with it. And so there's different thoughts on this. Some people will have it load every time, so that way they try to sell it every time, and you just have to remove it. But having it load the retail price and cost can be beneficial there. Also related to sales deals, let's go into a deal itself. If you are getting reserve or finance income, you put it in here under this finance charge, you check this little box, you put in the amount you're going to get for reserve. It knows what to do based on the lien holder that you select, which by default is none. So you need to make sure you go in and you pick the correct lien holder. And there is a list related to that under sales lists and lien holders. And once again, we're going to see oh, this lien holder, here's a bunch of sales categories I can pick from. And so then you define that sales category to where that goes. Let me go. If your sublet is in a weird spot, I know I'm kind of bouncing around in a couple places. System lists and unit makes. If sublet's not actually going to sublet cost of goods sold, it's just going into your labor cost of goods sold. That's because in the make, your sublet category is just your regular labor category probably. So you want to make sure that sublet is selected, and there's a couple other categories listed in there. And maybe I'll just end on the last two. So we spent a lot of time. We didn't get through necessarily everything here, but if you've noticed in this meeting, I guess, it is crucial that your accountants actually know your system because that's what's going to populate everything into accounting. And so if you have accountants that are saying, oh, I don't need to learn the front end, I don't need to talk to them, I don't need to see what they're doing, I'll just figure it out on the back end, that for me means there's a lot of extra effort going into it, and there's probably a lot of miscommunication, and there's probably a lot of duplication happening to create issues. And so you really can't do the accounting unless you know the front end. And this is actually going to take care of 70-80% of when Lightspeed says it'll take care of the accounting for you. It's looking at your inventory, it's looking at revenue and cost of goods sold, and a lot of it will generate your receivables and your payables for you. And so the only thing left from the accounting standpoint is your expenses. You do have the ability to get accounting integrated with ADP so that it can post payroll through that. But when we're looking at expenses, when you're first in Lightspeed, I often hear dealers, they're like, I've got too many GL accounts. There's too many departments, too many GL codes. I would say that the default chart, again, is there by design. It's what 20 groups are looking at. It's been built over time by dealers. And the very first thing we want to look at the dealership is the company making money? Yes or no? We can solve that answer pretty quickly, if we're doing the accounting caught up to date by running the P&L. The very next question that's going to follow that is each department making money? Yes or no? And I would say let's not have the accountants be the one to hold us back. There's a really simple setting in here under general ledger lists and distributions where I can create distribution methods, whether it's specific to that vendor or it's a kind of a group category, if it's just advertising, and I can assign when I make an entry using this distribution, how much of it goes to each department. And then that enables the owner to be able to really look at the business in all facets of it to really see, what is our absorption rate in each of those departments? Are we actually making money? Yes or no? And this distribution, you can set on a vendor. Let me just go to in the vendor setup screen here. So under payables and vendors, you can assign it right here so that when you go to make your invoice, it will automatically load those accounts in, and then you don't have to think about the GL accounts. It also makes it so that you have consistency. So as you're actually making invoices for those expenses, they are going to the same spot every time, and you don't have to think about it. And so it really should just be the expenses that you're having to enter as you're completing the accounting process and reconciling the accounts. One other thing that is a for sure from our standpoint, what you should be doing. So you can have bank accounts set up, checking accounts, savings accounts, and under general ledger and bank reconciliation, this is where you reconcile them. For us, it's a no-brainer. Your credit card should also be set up as a financial account. It just makes things so much quicker and cleaner to reconcile. We have a YouTube video on our YouTube channel that kind of digs into that into detail. But credit cards should be set up as a financial account, and you should be able to see that somebody is reconciling them in here. Let me see if there's anything else specific. Go ahead.
I got a couple of questions, and then I got a few things to wrap up with when you're done. Roseanne asked, can you set a vendor to have the account not distribute?
If you don't have a distribution, it won't. So it'll just, when you go to make an invoice,
you can click on that little eraser and just erase it, correct?
Yeah. Yep. So if that little eraser will get rid of it. And if you don't have something specific assigned to the vendor, in here you can hit this distribute button and assign it then. But yeah, you can get rid of the distribution.
Roseanne said, no, I mean an account, but goes to category 10. I'm not.
Oh, so she might be thinking of the departments. So if I have, so under general ledger, lists and departments, I have these departments set up. And again, it's to get down to the level of, I want to know if I'm making, do I actually make money with these departments? And so I probably have a, I'm looking at accounts and, there's 900 of them. I don't think I need that many. When I try to make an entry, it won't let me post to these ones. I have to tell it -10, -20, -30, -40. And that's because the system is trying to force you to pick a department. Who's responsible for this? Who's accountable for this? So technically in an account, the way that that's defined is when you're making the account, the department is set up here. But if you have any history, you wouldn't be able to change it. But in my opinion, it is better to post to a department account, even if you think you're not ready to separate everything out and split it out. Start with picking one of them, at least for now. But really, there's creating distribution methods will make your data entry time get cut down significantly, and then management again. What is the purpose of us doing this accounting? Is it I just want to get to a tax return? Great, just dump it all into one department. It doesn't matter, roll forward. If the purpose is I want management to be able to actually use this information and kind of see what's happening in the business, I want to divide this out and split this out against departments, because this is really what we want to see. Dealers spend a lot of money to go to different 20 groups. And if we're not putting the information in for them to be able to use it, one, they're not going to get a lot out of that 20 group, related to the financial. They'll get a lot of other beneficial stuff, but and they won't be able to do it daily, right? And so on us as accountants, it's for me, it's just a little bit of setup that will go a long way in the dealership to show more information about what's happening in the store. And it's what a lot of dealers need to get to. Any thoughts on that, Mark?
I was just going to say that, when working with dealers, when I get dealers that are frustrated with the system and they're telling me that it's not calculating correctly, that it's not working right, or they always have errors and problems. I typically tend to find two things are going on there. So one, again, sales categories are not set up correctly, and so the transactions are not flowing to the correct GL accounts. And then the other one that I've come across more frequently lately, if you go to system, list, and document locking, or actually it's
just in here.
Yeah.
System document locking.
Yeah. So you don't have any records that are open. But the other thing that I tend to find is that dealers a lot of times just don't have good usage history, or they don't have good usage of the system. And, you've got parts people that have access to parts inventory. They're opening records and they're leaving it open. Like Brian's got 15 things open on the left side of his screen. They got parts records that are open. They got major unit records that are open. They got repair orders that are open. And what we should be doing when we open a record is do what we need to do and get out of it. And that's not happening at a lot of dealers. And what I found recently is that dealers have given their employees access to this document locking screen. And so what this was really designed for was if somebody was in a major unit record and then the power went out and their system went down and they got kicked out of Lightspeed, that's what this was really designed for, was, hey, we truly had a record open and we can't get back into it now. We need to clear that lock. What I tend to find now is that dealers are giving employees access to this so that if they go to get into something that somebody else is in, then they're just coming in here and unlocking that record. And now the problem you've got is you've got two employees in the same record. And this is creating a lot of issues for dealers. So I'd strongly recommend you go through, look at your security settings, and maybe have one, maximum two employees in the dealership who can actually unlock documents. Don't give that out freely to all of your staff. And, if a document is locked, let's go back and let's figure out who's got that record open. Let's get them to get out of it correctly and close out of it. And let's use the system the way that it's designed. that will eliminate a lot of problems. If you go to system and sessions, I think it's called user sessions.
Session activity.
Yeah, so this will be the first place you want to go to is if somebody's calling up and saying, hey, I can't get into a repair order, then come in here and look, and this will tell you who exactly is in that. And then you can just, I'm going to call up Brian Lucas and say, hey, you've got this RO that's open, or you've got this major unit record that's open. I got to do some work with that. I need you to get out of that. And as soon as he gets out of that record, then that's going to allow me to do what I need to do. So definitely disable that document locking from all of your employees, and that'll save you some problems as well. Did have one other question from Mindy. Said, I have a question regarding tax exempt customers. The tax exemption is year to year. How can we keep our customers updated at the beginning of each year? Lightspeed says there's no way to automate it. It's a record by record update. I can tell you how I deal with this, but I'll get your thoughts on it first.
I haven't had that question before. Go ahead. What are your thoughts?
So we have a similar situation in Texas in that our tax exemptions run on 3-year cycles. They actually all are on 3 years, so they're not rolling. And so at the end of every 3 years, every one of those expires, and we have to get a new signature from the customers. If you go back to the general tab, what I do at each one of those 3-year cycles is I just call up Lightspeed and I'll say, I'll have to ask for tier 2. So tier 1 can't do this. And I'll say, hey, can you just run a script in our system? And for all the customers I've got who have an override cell type selected, then I'll tell them what type it is. It's usually going to be tax exempt. I'll say, will you just run a script and uncheck all of those boxes for me? And so that wipes out that override for every one of those customers. And then as we get new tax exempt documents from those customers, then we're manually coming in here and turning them back on as we've got the paperwork to back up the exemption. But that's the easiest way. And we have been talking to, I mean, if you go under system and list and tools or system tools, there's a couple, you had it there for a second. You don't need to click on anything, just show it. There are a couple of tools. There's one for working with suppliers. There's one. Oh, no, it's actually under data updating. Sorry. Go to the next one over in the left. So you've got parts inventory and makes unit inventory update. We have been pushing Lightspeed to add a customer update to where we could actually do this ourselves without having to call tech support and have them run those queries. Haven't got them over that hurdle yet, but hopefully somebody from Lightspeed will watch this video and we'll keep pushing on them to add that tool. But we'd like to be able to do some of those mass updates ourselves without having to call Lightspeed.
Yeah, good input there.
Couple other things to add. So, we started these webinars about 7-8 months ago. So we're trying to do these every month at this point in time. These are kind of deep dives into individual subjects. So we're doing one next month. Brian Tierney, our third amigo who's not here, is going to be heading that one up. And I was actually looking at my notes. I couldn't find the email. I forget what he was going to do. Do you remember what it was, Lucas?
Yeah, I can grab it real quick. But he's going to walk through diving deep into the sales module from lead to deal. Let me actually pull, if I can grab this real quick.
So he's going to do that. And then the month after, I'm actually going to dig into what are my top 3 reports that every department manager should be running every day, every week, every month. So I'll show you, if you're only going to do 3 things every week, what should your sales manager be looking at? What should your parts manager look at? And then I will give you all of those reports so that you can import them into your Lightspeed system.
Perfect. The last thing for me to finish this off, one area that we didn't cover, didn't have enough time for, in this management activity, there's a lot of options in here, but the one thing to pay attention to is this bank deposit screen. I wish this wasn't actually called bank deposit. I wish it was just called end of day or cashier reconciliation as well. But this will take all the money you're receiving from these menus, and depending on your settings, it will push it to your bank accounts in a certain way. And so again, we have a really good video on the bank deposit process to see this. But the concept behind this is in your bank account, your deposits show up a certain way. It's either 1-to-1 or many to one. And so all this process is doing, this is a batching process. I can get these in this main section to show up on one line, and these below will show up on one line by type. And so it's really just batching them to show up in your bank account and your bank reconciliation the same way. A lot of people use this as their, this is the screen to make sure I got all my cash. There's a better report for that under management activity, method of payment summary. It's 840. You might have one in your system that we put in there with tag or with the surcharge in here, but that's really the one to review every day to see, did everybody bring me all their receipts and all the cash and checks? So I, have it all verified. But take a look at that video on that side where we didn't have enough time today. And then if you guys do have some ideas for us, feel free to shoot Mark or myself an email for the future webinars. As Mark said, Brian Tierney will be doing the sales deals from lead to deal. He's going to be looking at the AI command center a little bit, and then Mark will be doing the reports following that each department manager should look at. But if you have any other ideas on what you'd like us to dive deep into, feel free to send those our way. Any other last questions that we want to go on before we?
Nikki dropped one for you. Said, "I wish there was a way to pick items in the bank deposit that you want to deposit."
I agree with you. We've been asking Lightspeed to add like a little tab here that you could see the individual items to select and then deposit. The only real one you have is just by a cashier in this first window. But maybe reach out to us, because again, we might be able to change some of the settings to where it will work more the way you want it to work. And also, again, this isn't, you might be looking at it from the paradigm of, it's in my bank account, now I'm going to record this, where we see this as I'm reviewing what happened today and confirming I have everything. And then the bank reconciliation actually happens in the bank rec, where yes, the money showed up. And so feel free to reach out for more information there.
Big news if everybody didn't catch it last week. Lightspeed is bringing credit card processing in-house. So if you've been dissatisfied with WorldPay, that is coming under Lightspeed's banner. They weren't too clear on kind of what the rollout process is going to be like that for dealers who are currently with WorldPay kind of transitioning over. But here in the near future, you'll be able to negotiate your rates with Lightspeed, be able to call them if you need tech support or you got any problems. So I think that's going to be a big win for dealers. And then I kind of started these, but Brian's company Tag, they also do Tag Thursdays. What day of the month are you utilizing those?
The first Thursday of every month is our Q&A or AMA, Ask Me Anything webinar is the first week. Yeah.
So if you have any questions about Lightspeed or Excel or anything like that, then sign up for those. And it's really an open forum. I sit in on those when I can, when I'm not traveling. But I think Brian and his team, they do a great job of just answering random questions. And if you want to improve your Excel skills, or you want to ask some more granular questions on Lightspeed, then that's a great way to do it. And we'll actually got a live Lightspeed system. We'll kind of dig through and show you exactly what it takes. So been a good resource for dealers who just have random questions or want to know how things work.
Perfect. All right. Well, I think appreciate everybody for being with us today. I know we went a little bit longer, and these are already set up as long meetings anyway. So everybody that made it to the end, congratulations, you made the marathon. You feel good. We appreciate you for being here and for providing the feedback and the questions for us to help make sure that this is valuable for you. And again, Mark, appreciate your comments as you bring in that dealership live experience and what you've done over time. And we've seen a lot of dealers have a lot of good input for us, and just want to be able to give back to the community. So thanks everybody for jumping in, and we'll see you next month.
Sorry if I interrupted you too many times, and we will get this out on YouTube in the next few days. So
no worries, you're good. Thanks, Mark. Thanks everybody.
Everyone have a great week. Bye-bye.